Have you ever heard a sound so overwhelming that it didn't just reach your ears? It invaded your mind, crushing every thought, every ounce of calm you had left? That's what it was like at Drang. Imagine this. More than 1,000 artillery pieces firing at once, their thunder exploding just 25 yards behind you. The ground shudders. The sky tears open with the scream of jets dropping 500 and 750-pound bombs, so close you can feel the shockwaves in your chest. Every blast rattles your bones. Every detonation reminds you that you're alive, barely. Now picture standing in the middle of it all, a landing zone so small and exposed that to rise to your feet is to invite death. Machine gun fire cuts the air like angry hornets. Bullets snap past your head, rip through the grass, punch into the dirt around you. The noise is relentless, so deafening it feels like it's drilling into your brain. You can't think. You can't breathe. You can only fight. And somewhere out there, hidden in the jungle shadows of Chu Pong Mountain, thousands of North Vietnamese soldiers are waiting, watching, pouring down on you in waves. The first major battle between America and North Vietnam had begun. I was not born a soldier. I was born in Mount Vernon, New York, and raised between Nell, New York, and Tucson, Arizona. My father had served in the Navy during World War II, a chief petty officer. Service was in his blood, but for me, it came differently. At the University of Alabama, ROTC was mandatory. 2 years in uniform turned into a decision that would define the rest of my life. I discovered I was good at soldiering, good at leading. So when my obligation ended, I chose to stay. What began as duty became a career. 24 years active service, 25 credited in retirement. I learned the hard way. From Ranger School at Fort Benning, from airborne training, from commanding basic training companies in South Carolina, where I saw boys become men under my watch. Every step was preparation. Every test hardened me for what was to come. By 1963, I was in the 2nd Battalion, 23rd Infantry. We converted to the 1st of the 7th Cavalry under Colonel Hal Moore. I stayed with him nearly 3 years. That bond would matter more than any of us knew. In September 1965, we boarded a troop ship, the Morris Rose, an entire brigade sailing across the Pacific. Days blurred into weeks, and somewhere on that voyage, Colonel Brown, our brigade commander, told me to paint the 1st cavalry patch on the smokestack of the ship. We climbed in the dark with grappling hooks, clinging to steel as the ocean rolled beneath us, brush in hand, painting our colors high against the night sky. By morning, the emblem of the 1st Cav stared proudly over the waves. It was a small thing, but it meant everything. We were the first team heading into Vietnam. We had no idea what waited for us in the Drang Valley, but soon we would learn. When we finally set foot in Vietnam, nothing felt real at first. The air was thick, wet, and heavy with the smell of smoke and jungle rot. Quyen Non and K, names that meant nothing to us before, but would soon burn themselves into memory. We built a tent city in An Khe. Patrols, small skirmishes. Nothing yet that hinted at the storm gathering on the horizon. Still, the sense was there, an invisible weight pressing on every man. The whispers of enemy movement, the stories of ambushes, the reports of Americans cut down in remote valleys. By November, the whispers became orders. The North Vietnamese Army had struck the Special Forces camp at Plei My. Intelligence warned they wanted to cut Vietnam in half, sweeping down Highway 19, all the way to the sea. Our brigade was tasked to stop them. We moved to Pleiku. French plantation houses turned into command posts. Red dirt roads filled with convoys of trucks and helicopters. At night, I studied maps by lantern light, tracing the ridgelines and valleys where the enemy might hide. It was like staring into the mouth of something vast and hungry. Then came the intercept. One night, an ASA lieutenant woke me at 1:00 a.m. He told me they had caught a signal, Chinese Mandarin, encrypted, a situation report. The location traced directly to the foot of Chupong Mountain. I listened, silent, my stomach twisting. It meant the enemy wasn't scattered rumors anymore. They were there, waiting. The next morning, Colonel Hal Moore and I flew reconnaissance over the Drang Valley. From the air, the jungle looked endless. But we marked 2 clearings where helicopters might land. One named Tango. One named X-Ray. X-Ray would be our choice. The map looked clean. Flat ground. Enough space for 8 Hueys at once. But maps never tell the truth of war. November 14th, 1965. At 10:48 a.m. The first lift of helicopters thundered toward landing zone X-Ray. Salmer, artillery pounded the edges. Gunships spat fire into the trees. And then the Hueys dropped low, skimming the treetops, blades chopping the air like steel teeth. Son B Company landed first. Within minutes, they captured a lone North Vietnamese soldier. The interpreter questioned him. His answer froze the blood in our veins. 3 full regiments of NVA were massed on Chupong Mountain, and all of them wanted to kill Americans. That was the moment everything shifted. We weren't walking into a skirmish. We were walking into history, and none of us knew if we would walk back out again. The warning from that captured soldier spread like fire. 3 regiments, thousands of enemy troops, and we had barely a battalion on the ground. But there was no turning back. By noon, more Hueys churned the air, dropping men into landing zone X-Ray. The grass was waist-high, the heat suffocating. The smell of burned powder still clung to the earth where artillery shells had struck. Every man who jumped from those helicopters knew we were being watched. Landist at 12:15, contact came. B Company moved out cautiously from the clearing's edge. They pushed into the tree line, and the jungle erupted. Automatic fire tore through the brush. Mortars thudded from hidden pits. Men dropped to the dirt, shouting for medics. Radio calls flooded the net. We had stumbled straight into the teeth of the enemy. Lieutenant Herrick's platoon was cut off almost immediately, encircled on 3 sides. He reported heavy fire, casualties mounting, ammunition running low. Colonel Moore ordered them to hold at all costs. Rescue attempts began, but every step toward Herrick's men was met with blistering fire. I could hear the fear in the voices over the handset. Young Americans, 20 years old, fighting for their lives in a jungle they could barely see through. Some called out grid coordinates with trembling voices. Others screamed into the radio for help. The North Vietnamese weren't just fighting, they were hunting, and we were the prey. Artillery was our lifeline. From fire bases miles away, big guns thundered, shells tearing into the slopes of Chupong. But for every blast, more enemy fire poured back. It felt endless, as if the mountain itself was alive, spitting men and steel at us. By late afternoon, the battlefield had become chaos. The clearing was a swirling mass of helicopters landing and lifting off, medics dragging the wounded, and gunships strafing the trees until their barrels glowed. Still, the enemy pressed harder. They wanted to overrun us before nightfall. As the sun dipped, I looked around the perimeter. Faces streaked with sweat and dirt. Eyes wide, rifles clutched tight. No one spoke of survival. We only spoke of holding the line, because deep down, we all knew the truth. This was not just another patrol, not just another operation. This was the test that would decide if the 1st Cavalry Division lived or died in its baptism of fire. And as night began to fall over landing zone X-ray, the jungle whispered with movement. The enemy was still out there, thousands strong, waiting for the darkness to finish what daylight had begun. Our night fell fast in the Drang Valley. The heat of the day lingered, mixing with the smell of sweat, gunpowder, and blood. We set up defensive positions around landing zone X-ray, digging shallow foxholes, stringing belts of ammunition within arm's reach. The jungle around us was alive with sound. Crickets, distant thuds, and then silence so complete it felt unnatural. It was the silence that warned us. The enemy was moving. At 6:00 p.m., the first wave came. Hundreds of North Vietnamese soldiers surged from the tree line, their silhouettes flickering in the muzzle flashes. They charged low, screaming, firing AKs, hurling grenades. Our lines erupted in fire. Machine guns stitched the dark. Flares burst overhead, painting the battlefield in white light, shadows dancing like ghosts. The ground shook under the weight of mortars. Shrapnel tore into men. The screams of the wounded mixed with the staccato rhythm of rifles. But still, we held. Radio chatter was frantic. On left flank under heavy assault. 7's, ammo running low. 7's, send medics now. 7's, voices cracked under the strain, but not one man abandoned his position. Colonel Moore walked the line, calm and deliberate, as if his very presence anchored us to the earth. He ordered airstrikes danger close, bombs shaking the mountain itself. Jets roared in the night sky, dropping fire into the jungle, cutting swaths through enemy ranks. Yet the attacks did not stop. Wave after wave crashed against us. Each time, they seemed endless, like a tide determined to drown us in sheer numbers. Some positions were overrun and taken back only with bayonets and grenades. Men fought hand-to-hand in the tall grass, faces inches apart, eyes wild with survival. The night stretched on, each minute an eternity. By 3:00 a.m., the firing slowed. The jungle went quiet again, as if the earth itself exhaled. Bodies lay twisted in the grass, both ours and theirs. And in that moment, with rifles still hot and ears ringing from the violence, we understood the truth. This was no skirmish. It was a crucible, a place where men were tested beyond limits, where history carved its mark in blood and fire. And the dawn would bring no mercy, because the enemy was still out there, waiting. When the first rays of dawn broke through the canopy, the battlefield revealed itself in brutal clarity. The tall grass was trampled flat, littered with spent casings and broken rifles. Bodies, friends and foes alike, lay still, a silent testimony to the night's savagery. We were alive, but we were not the same. The men who had laughed that morning, who had joked about home or complained about the heat, now sat in silence. Faces gray with exhaustion, eyes hollow from what they had seen. Some stared into nothing. Others whispered quiet prayers, clutching rosaries or dog tags. The air smelled of smoke, sweat, and grief. Colonel Moore walked among us, his voice steady as he reassured the wounded and ordered fresh defenses. Because he knew, as we all did, that it was not over. The enemy was still out there, waiting for another chance. But in that brief moment of stillness, we felt something more than fear. We felt the weight of brotherhood, the unspoken bond between men who had stood shoulder to shoulder in the darkest night, refusing to break. Manasabra, war would take much from us. It already had. But it could not strip us of that bond. That we carried forever.